Here, I'll show you what I'm going to talk about for those of you who are watching on video. I'm holding up a plaque. There's the plaque. It is the Polaris Heritage Award that I was going to say we won. I guess technically we didn't win it. The band, The Organ, won it. But it's for a record that we put out, a million years ago. Well, not really. We put it out maybe 20 some odd years ago. I think 2005. So it would be 20 years ago. And there's the plaque. And listen, I was excited that we won this award. Um, 604 has always, I think, been a bit confusing to people because we signed so many different kinds of bands. We've got a country division that's been successful. We have a pop division that's been successful. We have a rock division that's been successful. We've got light organ, which does alternative music. That's been successful. We've got an ambient label. And I think that's confusing sometimes to people outside the company. So the organ was an interesting one for me because I signed them sort of right around the time that Nickelback was really, well, they had already blown up. I mean, they blew up in 2001. And 2005 was actually the year they put out All the Right Reasons, which was another huge album. But it's also when that sort of negative Nickelback stuff was starting. Subsequent to my signing of the organ, we started Light Organ, kind of as a reaction to that. Because my own personal history was very steeped in alternative music. It's another genre I love. I was the lawyer for Mint Records for many years, which means I had roles in the careers of artists like New Pornographers and Nico Case. The Organ was a band that was very immediate for me in terms of the first time I saw them, I was like, I have to sign this band. I saw them I think it was at the Piccadilly Pub, the long departed Piccadilly Pub on Pender Street in Vancouver. I think they're long departed. Somebody had given me a tip. I remember who it was. It was a local producer named Garth Futcher, commonly known as Futcher. And he said, oh man, I saw this band and they're like a female version of the Smiths. And, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh shit, I got to get my ass down and see that. So I did. And, I walked into the Piccadilly Pub and there they are. It's like dark room, single spotlight on Katie the singer. It was mesmerizing. I don't remember what song it was. It didn't matter. I was smitten within about 10 seconds. I was like, oh my God. And I made an offer very, very quickly. And, we ended up signing them. But it was not an easy signing. And I think a lot of it was because of the affiliations with maybe things that were deemed to be not cool. And that's always been a problem, I think, for 604. I say a problem just in a sense of like, there is a part of me that wished we were considered more of a cool label. And I think in some respects, we are considered a cool label. I mean, Carly Rae Jepsen's really reinvented herself as sort of a pitchfork kind of artist. And, we've done well in that world. Lots of alternative bands of ours have done great. The Zolas, Hotel Mira, Fake Shark, the Mounties. So that chip is kind of off my shoulder now, all these years later. But at the time, that was tough. And that definitely played into the negotiation and it played into the signing. Because I think that band really had concerns about being too closely affiliated with, Nickelback or, some of the bands that were on the label. And I respected that and I understood it. It was frustrating to me, but I understood it. So at some point, I actually pulled the Mint record guys into it and said, hey, you guys like this band? And they're like, yeah, we love this band. I said, well, I don't know. Would you be interested in maybe making a pitch as a joint venture? And they were, and we did, and we signed the band. So getting this award all these years later was really, I don't know, it affected me. Yeah, so fast forward, here we are 20 years after the release of that record. There was some bad, I don't want to say blood because it wasn't really on my side, but there were definitely, like when that band broke up, there was a lot of acrimony. They expressed their dislike for me. Not all of them, some of them. But I mean, in the press even, there was some stuff that was said which, boy, it hurt. I'm not going to lie about it. That was something that really hurt, in part because I felt it was pretty inaccurate and sort of slanted in a way that wasn't really fair. But, it is what it is. And this happens in this business. And I'm a big boy. And excuse me, that's fine. When I realized, oh God, it's the 20th anniversary of this album, I was like, we got to do something. But I knew that was going to be hard because I think members of the band weren't talking. I don't know if it's just passage of time, but I knew certain members of the band hadn't talked to each other in years. And I think there was maybe some bad feelings between some of them. I don't know. I don't want to say stuff that I'm not 100% sure about. I'm going to get rid of this pen because I have a bad habit of clicking pens during a podcast, which I just did there. I threw it away from myself, so I'm not going to click it. So I emailed one of the members of the band who I tended to get along with quite well. And I said, listen, I know there's been acrimony between the band members, between the band and 604, between the band and Mint. Do you think we could all put our sort of negative feelings aside? And, just for the sake of the record, could we do something? Because it's such a great record. It impacted so many people. And I just really think it would be great for us to do a lovely, 20th anniversary vinyl release. And I was really expecting to get shot down. And the band member said, you know what? I agree. Let me see what I can do. And I didn't hear back for a while. It might have been a month. And I just assumed, it didn't go anywhere. But I actually heard back and they were like, yeah, we would like to do this, which was amazing to me. So, Mint wasn't that involved in it. I think I don't want to say too much on their behalf, but let's just say they felt better not being directly involved, but we're fine with us doing it, us being 604. And so we did it. So me and Julie from my team were really the driving force, and Shelby from the band. Like the three of us really, we would communicate with Shelby, she'd communicate with the other members, and amazingly, we got it done. And I don't know if any of you have seen it. I should have brought a copy down here, but it's a beautiful, beautiful re-release. It's got Grab That Gun, but also the EP Thieves. So that's essentially their entire catalog. There was an indie release before Grab That Gun. And when it came out, boy, it really did well. In my office, I have this giant blow up from the cover of Exclaim magazine with the band on the cover. And it really meant a lot because, like I said, I hated that some alternative bands were kind of shunning us. I guess we just didn't feel we were a cool label. So, boy, when that record started to take off, it was great. It felt great. And I also just loved the record. I mean, what a great record that is, start to finish. So we put out this re-release and man, it was so successful. We sold out the vinyl so quickly. And the thing that was interesting, one of the things that was interesting was it sold all over the world, which was amazing. Really, it was a feel-good story. Then we found out the band was being nominated for the Polaris Heritage Award, which was just like, wow, it already felt so good. And that re-release was just such a nice moment, both for the label and for me personally. And so we really worked our asses off to help get support for them because it's one of those awards that's voted for online. So, I kind of read the riot act to the staff, everybody vote every day, but we also were posting about it and really, trying to do our part to make sure that record got the recognition it deserved. And I'll be damned, the record won the award. So, you would think that's it. You would think that's the happy ending to the story, but unfortunately not really. The band accepted the award and made a speech. I've actually got it on my phone here, which, look, I'd love to lie about it and say it didn't hurt my feelings or it didn't feel shitty, but it hurt my feelings and it felt shitty. And I wanted to give a little bit of my side of the story on this. I'm not out to make bad blood at this point. I'm really just out to clarify some things. So, let me start with this, because this isn't something that comes up in the speech, but it's something that's come up in the press before. There's this narrative that certain members or maybe certain member of the band were sort of putting out there. And the narrative went something like this. We could have had a deal in the US, but Simkin basically cock blocked it. Simkin wouldn't let us sign this deal, which a little bit is true, but is mostly not true. Here's how it really happened. When we put out the record, we did get a bunch of interest. There was an interest from a label in France called Tally Trace. The band wanted to do the deal. We did the deal. No problem. It was a deal just for the territory of France. Then a label called Too Pure, which was an imprint of Beggar's Banquet. They expressed some interest in doing a deal for Europe. Band wanted to do it. So guess what? We did the deal. But then they came back and also wanted to do a deal for North America, or not for North America because we had Canada, obviously, but they wanted to do a deal for the US. And, you know, I had some concerns. I mean, number one, we were talking to other labels. I remember DreamWorks were really interested. They flew out. And there were other labels as well that we were talking to. I had real concerns. I didn't feel like this label had done anything in the United States. I didn't feel like it was super solid as an option. I sort of felt like, I don't know, like this is such a great record. I mean, the irony is the reason I had reluctance was because of how strongly I felt about the record. It was not a frivolous act. I mean, why would I do that? It doesn't even make sense. Like why, after I had already done all these deals for the record, I thought, legit concerns about doing a deal with this label. And here's the funny part about it all. That was 2005, maybe 2006, when we actually licensed the record to Beggar's Banquet for Europe. Well, guess what happened to Too Pure? Too Pure went under. Too Pure went under in 2008. They ceased being a label. Now, I don't know what that would have meant for this record. I don't know what would have happened. What I do know is my gut feeling that this was not a solid option for the US, I think ended up being correct. And I also feel confident that we would have gotten another deal for them if they hadn't broken up. That narrative is simply incomplete and is such a partial view of what actually happened. I never did anything out of spite. I just was trying to do what I felt was best for the record, best for the band. And look, you can have good faith disagreements, but the way it's been portrayed in the press is real shitty. Like, you know, I just did it to be an asshole, which is like, come on. I am first and foremost a businessman. And I also am a big advocate for artists. I would never, ever, ever have done something like that. So that's point number one. And then, I don't know, maybe I'm going to look at this speech. I'm not sure what the legalities are, but I'm going to maybe look at this quickly.
So there's two people that we want to thank for this album. We actually recorded this album with a modest budget, and we didn't like that recording, so we did it again.
Okay, let me stop there. We recorded this album with a modest budget, and we didn't like the record. Yeah, I mean, yes and no. The budget wasn't that modest. You know, 604 was in a different position then, but I remember, like, you know, it was a pretty good budget because we ended up hiring a couple of the members of the I'm having a new pornographers to produce the record, and they produced it at a nice studio. So, I mean, it certainly wasn't what I would call a low budget record. It wasn't, you know, $1 million budget for sure, but it wasn't like no budget. So that's a little, I'm not going to say it's untrue, but it's a little bit misleading.
With no money and two people did.
No, it wasn't no money. There was money. I know because it was our fucking money. So yes, there was money that was being spent on this record.
It's their labor and time for free. So the first is Paul Forbes, who recorded this in the back of an unfinished office space.
The back of an unfinished office space. It was actually 604 Records where it was recorded. It wasn't an unfinished office space. Here's what actually happened. So again, we did a deal with these guys, with a couple of producers. They made a record and they didn't like the record. And they came to me one day, the band, and said, we hate the record. And we threw it in the river. Now, I never knew if that was a joke, if they actually threw it in the river, but the point was they were not going to let it be released. And boy, that was hard. Like, I hadn't really heard much of it. Like, I don't tend to interfere when artists make a record. I let them make the record they want to make. And that was the case there. I let the band make the record they wanted to make. I remember popping by that studio once or twice just to hear what was going on, but that was it. So I was kind of shocked. And that was tough because like we had spent money on that. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, like, what are we going to have to now like make a whole new record? And so I can't remember if it was the band's idea, my idea. It was probably a combination of the two. But we had this space. This was the old 604 building. We had some space in the back. It was essentially just a big room, like a storage room. And we all went, well, geez, maybe we can just use that room. At least it won't cost any money. But you know what? That was our office space. And it wasn't a proper studio, so we could hear them recording every day, which in some ways was cool, but in other ways was distracting. But the point is, you know, there are labels in the world who, if you went and said, hey, I threw away our masters, you know, who would have sued or would have been angry or would have demanded the money back. I didn't do any of that. I mean, I was upset, but I was like, you know what? This band's worth it. Like, fine, let's figure out another way to make this record. And that's what we did. So I can't remember how long, but it felt like it was a while. I think they were in the back of 604 for maybe 6 weeks or something. I don't know. That's what it feels like. It's a long time ago. It's 20 years ago. And with Paul Forgs, who's great. Love Paul Forgs. He did a great job for very little money. I feel like I did pay him something or somebody did. And I know I paid Todd Simko, who's the other, I think they mentioned him as well. Let me keep going here.
The second is the late Todd Simko, who recorded, mixed this in his garage studio, and it took days and days and days because I'm difficult to work with. So,
well, I'll agree with that. That's a joke, just a joke. Yeah, Todd, I paid Todd, so he didn't work for free. That's simply not true. Todd was in the band Pure, and Todd was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful human being who I miss still. He died, I don't know, 12 years ago or so, who I miss very dearly. He was a dear friend, great artist, great mixer. And yeah, that just kind of makes me sad hearing that. But lest anybody have the wrong impression, he got paid. Say what you will about 604, we pay people who do work for us. So that's essentially it. I mean, look, I'm probably being overly sensitive about this, but you know what? And I'm not looking for a thank you. God knows I'm not looking for a thank you from this band. But you know what? Would it have been that hard to say thank you, Mint, and thank you, 604? Like, I just don't get it. And I mean, especially since it wasn't even just the original record. It's like, I feel like if I hadn't like really pushed to get this reissue out, the reissue would never have come out. And I also feel like that had a lot to do with them getting this award, because all of a sudden they were back in the press, they were back in the news, we were promoting it. We did some upscaled versions of their videos. So, you know, on the one hand, it was so great to get the award. And then when I saw that speech, I was like, wow, it's almost like somebody's got the intent of making it sound like 604 and Mint had nothing to do with that record, when in fact we had everything to do with that record. And I guess I just wanted to state it for the record. By the way, I haven't even talked to Mint about this. I don't know how they feel about it. I don't want to make it sound like I'm speaking on their behalf. I'm speaking on my behalf. I'm speaking on behalf of 604. And you know what? It doesn't change the feeling of pride I have about that award. I'm so proud of it. I'm proud of that record. I'm proud of the impact it had. I'm proud of the support we gave to the band and continue to give to the band, even though they don't seem to want to support us back. No problem. This is that kind of a business. If you're in this business for thank yous, you're in the wrong business.
Is the problem that they don't accept the 604 Mint involvement, or is the problem simply, do you think, a spite? They just don't want to mention your name? And where do you think this is coming from?
I just have known over the years, because I'll hear it from time to time, that this Katie in particular just has some real issue with me and with us. And I don't know. I mean, I know it wasn't just us. I mean, I think they had some issues with Mint, and I know that internally the members it was just a kind of a prickly band that, I mean, Katie said it herself in that speech. She's difficult to work with. And that's okay. I mean, I've worked with a lot of artists who are difficult to work with. That aspect of it, I don't fully understand. Like there were other things said in the press too, like, oh, Katie said something like, I haven't made music since because of the contract, where it's like, what are you talking about? Like I wasn't going to hold anybody to a contract. Like right when it all went down, there was maybe some, unpleasant exchanges, but I hadn't heard from them. Like if somebody had simply called, pick up the phone and said, listen, like we want to make a record. Are you going to like hold us to the contract? I would have most likely said no. Like, no, like why? It's been 10 years or 20 years. Like, why would I care? So I don't know. I got to be honest. I don't fully understand it. I think it ended badly, and it ended when they were sort of like just about to explode. And so like, I remember, and I don't know if this is true, but I remember hearing that when they broke up, they had both a Glastonbury offer on the table and a Coachella offer on the table. So to break up when you are on the verge like that, and that had nothing to do with us. I mean, I don't know why they would have not taken those offers, but I don't know, man. Like I think for whatever reason, Katie's got it in her mind that I was some horrible person out to hurt the band, which simply isn't the case.
I know you're saying about those offers. They were they were on track to become a really big band, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, they were absolutely on that track. And I think the fact that the re-release did so well, and not just here, all over the world, we had orders from, I mean, literally every part of the world, from Asia to Europe to South America. Like that band made an impact. And it is one of the disappointments of just my career that, that stopped when it stopped. Like it felt like the sky was the limit. And next thing I knew, it was just kind of over.
Have you seen the TV show, Seth Rogen's TV show, The Studio?
I've seen clips. I've never actually watched an entire episode.
Why
do you ask?
There's an episode that this issue kind of reminds me of, which is there's an episode where Seth Rogen, as the head of the studio, is like, basically the camera follows him around for a whole award show as he's like desperately trying to get a thank you for him into a speech of an actress. And like he says in the show, like this is like, it's like the equivalent of winning the award for him is getting the thank you in the speech, and it's a huge thing for him and stuff. And this whole thing kind of did bring to mind like that dynamic that maybe people don't realize.
And listen, I have a lot of stories about the thank yous in speeches. Like I do. I have a million stories. This one's a bit different because the thing is, it's been painful for 20 years. It really wasn't about the thank you. It was about the last 20 years and about reading shitty stuff about myself in the press and like, having to hear about that from time to time over the years. Because in my mind, and maybe I'm romanticizing it, it's like, you know what? A simple 3-second thank you in a weird kind of way to me would have really erased a lot of that sort of shitty feelings I've had about it over the last 20 years. So it wasn't like, because listen, I've had lots of artists win awards and they don't thank me. I couldn't give a fuck. It really wasn't about like that. It was more like, wow, what an opportunity to kind of set things right just by a simple thank you, Mint, thank you, 604. The fact that they couldn't bring themselves to just do that, tough to swallow.
Do you think they realized that impact at all?
I had some interaction with one of the members. Absolutely. I was very blunt about it and said, because they were like, well, we didn't really have time and it was a short speech and we didn't. I said, it would have taken 2 seconds. Thank you, Mint. Thank you, 604. I don't know if you just timed me, but what is that, 2 seconds? Like, give me a break. Like that's ridiculous. And then to talk about we recorded in an unfinished office space. You couldn't even say it was 604. I mean, that's like flat out revising history. That's like obliterating our involvement from the record, which why do that? You can hate my guts, but don't make it sound like we had nothing to do with it. But the thank you thing's funny, man, in this business. And I'll tell you something. Now I got to think about how much I want to say about this. So I'm going to not use names on this story, but I'll tell you a story. Earlier on in the label's history, we had an artist who we've had a few artists who've done really well, but we had an artist who did really well and who won an award at an award show. And thanked me, thanked a bunch of people, but didn't thank the president of our distribution company. And that person should be happy. I'm not revealing who they are. And we've been distributed by 4 different labels, so it could be anybody. But this person not only got pissed off at me because this artist didn't thank this person, but didn't talk to me for months. For some people in the business are a little too obsessed about the thank you. For me, in this case, again, it's not that I'm upset. It wasn't the thank you. It's what's happened in the last 20 years and this weird narrative that's been put out about it. And then, like I said, I thought, wow, like, it's kind of like when the Blue Jays lost the World Series, like all this great stuff. And then, at the very end, it's like, and it kind of just sort of felt like that. Like, man, what a year. This re-release was so good. And we win this award and we helped you do all that. And really? You recorded in an unfinished office space? Come on. You recorded for no money? Come on. Like, just be an adult and at least give some credit where credit's due.